ARD at the end, at the bottom there.
This is, to begin with, more of an abstract question, but anyway, if you, Kai Küstner, ARD, German Radio, I'm over here.
Okay.
If you listen to ministers today entering the building, you could get the feeling that NATO as well as Europe is going through an upheaval, or let's say a watershed moment that both have never experienced before, not only but also because there is a new president entering the White House soon. Two questions to both of you. Do you share that feeling? Is it a very special moment? And also, is there any reason for Europe to be afraid?
I start. There are many reasons for not only the Europeans, but also others in the world I would say, not to underestimate the threats that are currently challenging our security in the world. I think we've never experienced such an overlapping of crises around the world. And for sure, what we call a rules-based global order, framed especially in the UN system, is put to a stress test. So I tend to see this as a common challenge for our globe, in which the Europeans have a special role to play because of the strength we have. I know I might be the last European referring to the strength of Europe, but if you look Europe from the outside, as I constantly do, I was just coming back this morning from Africa, wherever you go in the world, people look at Europe as a place of security, human rights, integration, economic prosperity, still, even if we're coming out of a major crisis, still, in comparison with other parts of the world, we're doing pretty well. Sometimes inside the European Union, we don't realize our strengths as our partners around the world do. So I do not see a specific threat for Europe or for the European Union as such, if not the threat coming from the underestimation of our strengths. I believe that here again, you're right, we're going a bit in the philosophical order, but I'm convinced that Europe has all the instruments, all the resources, all the wisdom coming from its long history to overcome threats and difficulties it's facing. And I'm not negative about that, because the European integration process in particular has always grown stronger out of challenges and difficult times. Jens was remembering the fact that both NATO and the European Union were were born out of a terrible period of conflicts in the world, where Europe was the center of it. So we've always managed to learn from crisis how to go stronger and to deliver better lives for our citizens. And I'm sure it will not be an exception this time. And again, the basic rule, the basic European rule, the European way, is doing this in partnership with friends. And this is why the transatlantic cooperation is so key. Our work with NATO on security is so key. Our work with our neighbors, both to the east and the south, is so important. And also, I would like to add, our work to support the UN system is also crucial. So I believe that we will face the threats the world is facing today, staying united and using all the possible tools we have. And our work on security and defense inside the European Union is exactly aimed at that.
It is right that we live in a time with a lot of uncertainties, and many uncertainties, and with a more unpredictable security environment. But that's exactly why we need strong institutions. That's exactly why we need strong international institutions like NATO and the European Union. And that's also why this meeting today and the agreement among the ministers today is so important, because it strengthens not only NATO and the European Union, but it strengthens also the cooperation between NATO and the European Union. And by doing so, by strengthening the cooperation between the two main organizations in Europe, NATO and the European Union, we are also strengthening the transatlantic bond and the vital link between North America and Europe. So the meeting today and the agreement on the 42 proposals is an important step in building that kind of institutions we need, especially when times are uncertain, when we are faced with new threats and challenges as we are today. So the more uncertainty out there, the more we need stability and strength, which strong international institutions can provide. And I'm absolutely certain that the United States will remain committed to the transatlantic bond, will remain committed to NATO, and will live up to and be committed to the security guarantees to Europe. This is clearly stated by President-elect Donald Trump in many phone calls with European leaders and with me. And we also have to remember that just a few days ago, the US Congress authorized the budget, bipartisan support, a budget which quadrupled the funding for US presence in America, in US presence in Europe. So there is a strong bipartisan support in the United States for increased US military presence in Europe.
Lady in the front row.
Rudenko Anastasia, Ukraine. How enhancing cooperation between NATO and EU in the military sphere could help Ukraine?
Well, I think that the important thing is that both the European Union and NATO provides support to Ukraine. We provide political support, we provide practical support, and Federica can say more about what kind of practical support the EU provides, but I know that NATO, we have different trust funds where we help Ukraine with implementing reforms, with modernizing its defense and security institutions. And we also provide, of course, strong political support, and we have a close partnership with Ukraine. The idea with the statement we have agreed today is that we will also look into how we can work more closely together in providing support, in building capacity, in providing training, and in supporting countries like Ukraine. So EU and NATO, we do a lot already, but I think we can be even more efficient and provide even stronger support by coordinating our efforts in, for instance, Ukraine.
The European Union is, as you know, working very hard to support the country. Ukraine in its reforms, especially focusing on the economic reforms, the social reforms, anti-corruption, the judicial system. In the security sector, we are also supporting, with our presence there, the security sector reform, looking more at the civilian side of it. And this is a work to which the European Union is and stays very much committed. And I would say that the added value here is the strong determination we share across the Atlantic on keeping the Ukrainian priority a priority in our agenda, not only in Europe but also across the Atlantic. Obviously, we're also working together in a field that is purely political, so a little bit less for the NATO practical work, which is the full implementation of the Minsk agreements. We just received President Poroshenko the other week to discuss this. We'll have the EU-Ukraine Association Council in 10 days from now, and I will meet Foreign Minister Klimkin the day after tomorrow in Hamburg. This to tell you the intensity and the regularity of exchanges we have. All of this to try and solve also the conflict in the east of the country. Obviously, this is going to stay a top priority for us. The unity of purpose here across the Atlantic is important, and I believe that it is really crucial, this agreements we have, even beyond what practically we will do, and there will be a lot of practical things we will do out of these 42 proposals, but there is a political sense also of our strong commitment today, expressed jointly, in parallel, in the same day, in the same city, if I can add, in saying that our priorities, our values, our interests are shared, and we will continue to work together in this.
El País.
I'm Lucia Bellan from El País. A question for both. Don't you fear that the current difficult relation between Turkey and the EU can be an obstacle in this strategy to foster EU-NATO cooperation? Thank you.
Start? You start?
No,
As you like. You know, it hasn't been. It hasn't been an obstacle. On the contrary, I think that we've had a smooth process. If you think of the months, not years, but months, that took us and our teams to work on such detailed and broad set of proposals, these 42 proposals from July to today. It's quite an impressive record in terms of timing, which means that there was a strong political support and a strong ownership, as I said, in all EU member states and in all what I've seen NATO allies to make this happen. Otherwise, you don't manage to do such a work in such a short time. Let me also say that EU-Turkey relations might be complicated from time to time, but this is the reflect of the fact that they are deep and important for both of us. I've had just this morning a long bilateral meeting with Minister Çavuşoğlu, as I had meetings in the past weeks with the EU Affairs Minister Çelik. Our contacts are constant and are not limited to one or two aspects of our policies. I know the media attention is mainly on the accession process or on the refugee issue, but we discuss mainly and mostly internal developments for sure, both in Turkey and in the European Union, but also the situation in Syria, and in these days in particular, the need to finalize the agreement in Cyprus. So we have a common agenda. We discuss relations between the European Union and Turkey are complex. Sometimes this being complex turns into being complicated, are rich, deep, and I would say fundamental for both Turkey and the European Union. And this only reflects in the fact that there is a strong engagement that I have seen, again, from all member states and all NATO allies in making this partnership between NATO and the European Union work. It's a common interest we share because we share the same region. You don't change geography. The challenges we face are the same, and we have an interest in working well together.
Turkey, of course, is part of the decision we made today. It was supported by all 28 allies, and I welcome the fact that we have full support within the alliance for the strengthened cooperation between NATO and the European Union. And I think that part of the success we have achieved, or the success we have achieved, is based on that it has been very clearly stated that when we develop and strengthen the cooperation between the two organizations, EU and NATO, we do not change the foundation and the principles which this cooperation is based on. So we have a pragmatic approach where we address different pragmatic and concrete issues without changing the principles, respecting the differences and the integrity of the two different organizations. That's one reason why it's possible to gather so broad support and full support from both EU and NATO. The other reason why we have full support from all NATO allies, including, of course, Turkey, is that it has been clearly stated that we need the fullest possible involvement of non-EU allies in the efforts of EU to strengthen European defense. And this is based on the fact that I welcome very much stronger EU, stronger Europe, because that will strengthen NATO and the transatlantic bond. Provided that we do this in a transparent and inclusive way. And we have to remember that in the West, Canada and the United States, in the North, Iceland and Norway, and in the South, Albania, Southeast, Albania and Turkey, they are NATO members, but they are not members of the European Union, but they are in different ways key to the security of Europe. So as long as we understand that this strengthened cooperation is something which is based on an inclusive approach and also the fullest involvement on non-EU allies, it's possible to have this very strong support from the whole of NATO.
And obviously, if I can add, obviously the same goes for the EU member states that are not NATO allies. The process we've entered in is based, as Jens was mentioning, and this is clearly stated in all our official documents, on inclusiveness, transparency, and respect for the decision-making autonomy of both organizations, and also of the specific character of security and defense policy of all members on both sides. So we know we are different, we respect our differences, and this is a good basis for a pragmatic and good cooperation.
Thank you very much. That's unfortunately all we have time for now. The Secretary General will be back later this evening rather. Thank you.